like to thank you all for attending our ANA Board Orientation Forum this morning. We've got some great speakers here to talk to you about what it takes to be a board member, the time commitment, many different aspects of being on the board of directors of the ANA or any nonprofit organization. You could probably apply it to any of those. Amongst our speakers, we have Tom Hallenbeck. Tom is a former president and board member of the ANA, and he's the chair right now of our development committee. We have Kim Kick, our executive director, and she's worked with a lot of boards and could tell you all the ins and outs of what goes on at board meetings and so on. And we have Holly Wheeland, our legal counsel, to talk to us about the legal aspects of being a board member. So, got a lot of things in store for you here, and I hope you enjoy your time here. And we'd love to see you think about running for the ANA board. So, just to give you a brief overview, the board of directors is in charge of the strategic vision for the ANA. And what that means is we look at the long-range planning, and we don't do enough of that, to be very honest with you, over the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And obviously the board at any one time, according to the current bylaws, you're only in there for 2 years to start with. You can rerun, obviously, but the president, vice president only serve 2-year terms as well. And so once those terms are up, you move on, and new people come in all the time, fresh ideas and that type of thing. So the idea is to create a good long-term strategy. Not just think about it for 2 years, but think about it for, again, 5, 6, 10 years ahead of us, so that we know where we're headed, what kind of funding the ANA is going to need, because there's a lot of great programs that we have on our agenda, things that we want to do in the upcoming years. Obviously, the hobby is faced with a lot of challenges now, from taxation and other issues that really are going to affect our industry. So it's important that we get people on the board who understand what we're dealing with and the kinds of issues that we have. And so that strategic vision is an important aspect of being a board member. Along with that, obviously, I like to say that we're a $5 million coin club because we have a $5 million budget, but we're a $75 million business because we have assets of $75 million. So you're not only looking at managing the current budget, but you're also responsible for maintaining the assets of the organization. That's one of your fiduciary responsibilities of being a board member. So an understanding of accounting and finance is an important aspect of it. Now, you don't have to be an accountant, you don't have to be a CPA, but you should at least be able to look at a financial statement and determine what that financial statement is telling you. And we have good people. We have a CPA that does audits for us and so on, and we have a good financial officer. So, and it's Kim's job to kind of oversee all of that and make that happen for us. Also, business and management. If you have some experience in business and management, that's really helpful, because obviously, as I said, we're not only a huge coin club, we're also a business, so it's important to understand that. You get into other issues like employment law. That's an important part of it. We have, I think, 35 employees or so at the ANA, a staff that does a great job of managing the day-to-day operations and so on, and so employment law is another important aspect of it. Human resources, that all ties in together as well. And then you should probably understand that our biggest mission is education. Education is the key mission of the ANA. And so moving forward, we're looking for people who are involved in educating. And so that's another important aspect of it. Technology, another key issue, because as you know, technology is moving at light speed. And if we don't keep up with technology, that's going to be a huge detriment to the ANA going forward. I read a study that just in the past 10 years, 90% of all of the data collected has been collected in just the past 10 years. So that'll show you how fast technology is moving forward. And some of the largest companies are mining, what I call data mining companies that mine data. So, to think that you're off the grid, probably impossible. But anyway, so understanding technology. Also security, we have a huge security concern at ANA because of the valuable collections that we store there, the exhibits that we do at conventions and traveling and all those kind of things. So security is another important thing. Understanding bylaws and what bylaws do, they direct us on what we can and can't do at the ANA. Following Robert's Rules of Orders, if you're familiar with that, that's kind of the way the board operates. We have a way of putting items on our agenda and then dealing with those items, so that we kind of follow Robert's Rules of Order in that regard. Also media relations. Obviously the ANA is a big organization, and publicity, sometimes good publicity is good for us, but also bad publicity, they say that any kind of publicity is good for you, but we try to avoid the bad publicity. Vendor relations. We have several vendors who we deal with, strategic partners. NGC is our official grading service, is an example of that. So understanding our relationships with those people, with auction companies. We have auctions at all of our major conventions, so understanding what's involved in that and dealing with auction contracts. Museum operation. We also have a museum in Colorado Springs, and we also bring our museum, in a sense, to a convention like the ANA. So museum operation is part of it. Library operation. We have a fantastic library at ANA headquarters in Colorado Springs that you can borrow from. And so just understanding how that library works and what a valuable tool that is to our hobby and our industry is important. And convention planning. As you can imagine, putting on an event like we're having here in Philadelphia, it can be very, very stressful and time consuming, and it takes a lot of talent to put on a show like this. So that's another big important part of it. And then motivation and collaboration, working with the rest of your board members, working with the president and vice president, working with the staff. All of those things are key, and understanding that relationship and how important it is. And teamwork, that's what it's all about, is teamwork. The more people that are working for the same goal, the better off you are. And the ability to present ideas effectively. If you come up with ideas that you think are going to be great for the ANA, then getting that into a format where you can present that as a motion at a meeting and understand how to back up that idea, that's an important part of it. And promoting and increasing our membership. That's becoming more and more of a challenge as we move forward. I think I read something, or we heard something this morning even, that said that the attrition rate for most organizations is about 15% a year. And fortunately, under Kim's direction here, we've actually increased our membership here of late. So that's a key thing, is increasing our membership, bringing new people into it, bringing young people into it, spreading that demographic over a wide range here. So promoting the membership is an important part of it. And that, again, that's going to be a tough part of the moving forward. So what I've done is kind of outline some of the things that we do on the board of directors and as an organization. And I'm going to turn this over now to Holly Whelan to talk about some of the legal aspects that you might face as a board member. And we're going to hold our questions, by the way, until the very end. So if you have questions, please wait till the end. And then if you have a question of a specific person that's on our panel, ask that question of them, and then I would ask the panel members to reiterate the question so that we make sure we get that on our video. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Holly Whelan. I'm General Counsel for the ANA. Thank you for being here. I want to go over some of the general legal duties and responsibilities for you as a potential board member. As Gary indicated earlier, the role of the board is to set policy and direction for the ANA. And it's important for you to understand that that's done as a group, and that is done after deliberation amongst all of you and an official vote on, when appropriate, votes on policy or direction. Having said that, the converse of that is you aren't authorized to act individually. So you can't bind the ANA to a contract. You can't announce policy unilaterally. And it's important that you remember that as you are acting as a governor. So while I say you aren't authorized to do that, I'm now going to engage in what you may consider typical lawyer doublespeak. So you shouldn't do it individually, but to the extent you do, outside members, vendors, contractors may view your action as the action of the ANA. So you acting individually, making a promise, making an assurance can be viewed by the outside as a commitment of the ANA, and that subjects the ANA to potential liability. So it's important that you act within the scope of the bylaws, common law, and statutory law. Those are generally what govern your role as a governor. I will tell you that the ANA's bylaws actually do a really good job of providing an overview of statutory and common law obligations. And so I strongly encourage you to read the entire bylaws if you're considering running for the board, but also specifically paying attention to the provisions relating to your duties and responsibilities. Also familiarize yourself with the board members' code of ethics. In those bylaws, you will see that there are the specific obligations, your fiduciary obligations. You are to treat the ANA, you have a fiduciary special relationship to consider the ANA's interest ahead of your own interest when making decisions on behalf of the ANA. You have a duty of care, a duty to put the interest, again, similar, flows from those fiduciary obligations, to put the ANA's interest above your own interest, to read materials, to educate yourself before you show up at a meeting and you vote on important decisions. You'll be asked to vote on contracts worth tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so it's very important that you educate yourself before making those decisions. You have a duty of loyalty to put the ANA's interests ahead of other interests. So if you are also an officer in a club, you need to put the ANA's interest ahead of those clubs' interests when you are making a decision on behalf of the ANA. You have a duty of honesty to be forthright when you come to a board meeting. If you have a bias, if you have a conflict of interest, you have a duty to disclose that. If you have information that supports or doesn't support a particular position being advocated, it's important that you share that. And you have a duty to inform, which is similar, a duty to make sure everyone understands both the pros and cons of any action. But again, those are more clearly set forth in the bylaws, so take a look at those. Now, if you're acting in a reasonable manner and if you're making your best efforts and you're not acting outside the course of your authority, you do have insurance coverage through the ANA, so that's important to know. We've got directors and officers coverage. But to the extent you engage in intentional misconduct or unauthorized conduct, you can jeopardize that coverage and then you may become individually liable. I can't think of that occurring in the history of the ANA, but I need to caution you on that, and you need to take that seriously. Over the years that I've been in this role, there's been a lot of discussion about transparency, and membership wants transparency in operations. Membership wants us to disclose why we take personnel actions, why we award certain contracts, those types of things. And I understand that concept. It's a concept that is stressed in government law, and it's the Sunshine Laws or Open Records Act. That doesn't apply to a private organization, to a nonprofit. And so it's important that you keep the confidentiality obligations in mind as you are acting in your role. Employees have an expectation of privacy in some of their personnel matters, and so for that reason, sometimes we can't disclose why we've terminated someone. As a board member, you're not authorized to tell other members who approach you and say, hey, we really like Susie Smith, why did you get rid of her? There may be legitimate reasons. You may know those reasons, but you're not necessarily authorized to disclose those reasons. Similarly, we enter into some contracts that have confidentiality provisions. You as a board member aren't authorized to disclose those. It's important that you treat that confidential information as confidential. It is, and I've been there, it's fun when you are in the know. It's not fun, but when you're in the know, when someone comes to you and says, tell me the scoop, why are you doing this, why are you doing that? It's tempting to share some of the information you have, but it's not always appropriate. So when you're hit up for the gossip on the floor or whatever, it's very important that you think about whether or not it is confidential. Fiduciary obligations in 5 minutes or less. I'm not sure that I can fully touch on them. I strongly encourage you to read the bylaws, read the members' code of ethics, and of course, whoever's counsel, feel free to approach us with any questions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Holly. That was very informative. And Holly's been our legal counsel now for a few years, and I think if you pay attention to the headlines and so on, you know that we haven't had any legal conflicts in a few years, and we're proud of that. So thanks again to Holly Whelan for that. Next, I'd like to invite Tom Hallenbeck to step up. Tom is a former president. He served on the board for many years. He's now our chair of our development committee. And part of the thing that's required of board members is fundraising. That's an important part, obviously, of helping the organization move forward. And so Tom will speak a little bit about that.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, I'm Tom Hallenbeck, past president and currently the chair of the development committee. And like Gary said, development committee is fundraising. It's an area that really has been somewhat ignored for almost ever in the ANA. And we're trying to put the focus back on the fundraising aspect of it, of the association. A brief history on it. Our main revenue source of the ANA is, of course, the membership. We get membership dues. Besides the membership dues, it's mainly from auction contracts and from a convention. This convention we're at right now is a revenue source. Our main expenditures are, of course, the ANA staff, putting on educational aspects of the association, whether it's different seminars, different forums, but it's education. So the one area that has always been neglected has been the fundraising. So in fundraising, that is basically it's the board member themselves putting some money out there individually, helping the association raise money through there's lots of different fundraising opportunities, but the board member themselves should be obligated, of putting up their own money. If you're going to be donating your time, as they used to say with any organization, you have time, talent, and treasure. And with most organizations that are not elected, our governance is a little bit different than most organizations. We actually elect ours in a popularity contest. We put a ballot out, and those people are elected in a popularity contest. With most organizations, you are invited to be a board member. They go out, they look at if you're a pillar of the community and you're on your Salvation Army board. You've probably been donating some money, and they bring you into the Salvation Army. You bring the red kettle, and then you're there for your time, treasure, and talent. In this case, most of the time, it's your treasure. The association runs itself a lot of the times and really doesn't need too much of the time and talent. With the ANA, with the association we all love, this is the governance board. It is your time, your talent, and your treasure. And all three of those need to be equally put out on a status. So rather than specifically just spending time at the ANA, and it is a time-consuming thing, as especially Gary knows as he becomes president. It starts out with a little bit of time, and the board itself, there really isn't that huge time commitment. Of course, you need to be aware of everything that's happening, but as you become the vice president, and then as you become president, the time goes up substantially. The commitment of the money, I've always thought you should pay for your own way for every association meeting. You should pay for your own hotel room. You should pay for your own meals. That's just common sense when we're a non-profit organization and we're not making money, donating your time, talent, and treasure. And that's pretty much all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And obviously, there's varying opinions about whether or not, board members should be paying their own way. So that is not a mandatory thing by our bylaws right now, but it's something to seriously consider. Next, I'd like to invite Tom Uram up. Tom is a new board member, and so maybe he can share some of his experience as being a new board member this past year. He can tell you a little bit about what his expectations were and what the reality is.
Thank you, President Atkins, and to all of you, and sorry I was about 10 minutes late, but just one of the things that you do when you're a board member or whatever. I was entertaining some volunteers at the United States Mint at 7:30 this morning, and I texted Gary and I said, I'm about 10 minutes late, but I'm glad it worked out. It's always good when you're in a position of being a board member and to be able to share some good things with your volunteers. And the ANA is about volunteering, and being a board member is, just as Gary has mentioned, this is my first term on the board of the ANA, but I was very familiar with the ANA before I joined. I've been a life member since 1974, and I worked on the exhibit area, the convention area, and in different aspects. So to a degree, I was familiarized with how the organization achieves its goals, and I hoped as a new board member to add some of that experience that I've had to being able to facilitate and encourage and wave the flag for the ANA, an organization that I'm very proud to be part of. And I think we can all look back and when we joined the ANA, and things were the way they were then, and things are going to be the way they are going forward. But we have an opportunity to look back and say what worked, and then look forward and say, here's what the new generation's looking for. Here's what the millennials are looking for. Are we reaching out to being able to broaden our scope into how we're going to achieve our educational goals and purpose? And I think we're on our way. And so as a new board member, I've been very encouraged that an organization that I was a volunteer for and now a part of as a board governor, that we're looking at those opportunities. Ken took my thunder because I told Holly, I just wrote down time, talent, and treasure. And if one of the things that I would say, if you are thinking about becoming a Board of Governors member or running for office, or even volunteering in the aspects that I see a number of you here are already doing, the experience that you get from other organizations that you might be part of, whether you're part of a nonprofit or a for-profit board, or just a volunteer, maybe Rotary or Kiwanis or Lions, you get to see how the interactions go with volunteers, and you're able to reach out and come up with ideas as well through other organizations that you're working with. So when it comes to foundation maybe, or from other avenues of communication, you're able to take those and translate them into what might be beneficial to the ANA that we might not have thought of. So as a new board member, I'm excited that we have a lot of opportunities. It is an organization that it is education-based, and we have to always keep that in mind. But how do we take that outreach now to the next generation and so forth? So I'm proud to represent our area as being a governor, and it is challenging. There is a lot of time, but it's the time that you make. How much are you willing to put into the goals and objectives that you want to achieve on a volunteer basis? Totally different when you're president, vice president, and you have all these meetings to go to and all the different other avenues that you have. But as a board member, you're pretty much on your own as to the degree of time other than the board meetings. What do you want to be doing in your local clubs? What do you want to be doing for outreach? Are you going to, as a governor, I think you need to be the one waving the flag. Just as Kim at the helm should be the one leading the biggest flag, the biggest charge. And she does, and she does. So with that, I'll leave you with that. If there are any specific questions, I'll be happy to entertain those. Thank you, President Gary.
Thank you. So yeah, like Tom mentioned, it is commitment. One of the biggest things and one of the complaints that I have anyway is that many times some of our board members are not fully prepared for the meetings that we have. And that's an important issue. If you're not going to be prepared, you really shouldn't think about joining the ANA board. If you are going to make that time commitment, it's vital that you review the materials that are presented to you. Usually, if we schedule a meeting, and typically what we have is a meeting once a month by phone, and then we have our major meetings at both of our major conventions. So it's vitally important that you prepare for those meetings, and typically what we do is we send out our materials, our board materials, at least 2 weeks before the scheduled telephone conference. And that way it gives you a chance to review all the materials, to write down the questions you have, that type of thing, and then you're prepared when the meeting actually occurs. So that's an important key aspect of it. As far as running, if you're thinking about running, there's two important things you need to do or understand. One is that you're going to need a biography of yourself, an autobiography in a sense that talks about your experience, the time, the commitment that you're willing to make, what you see as the future of the ANA, and those types of things. There's also, we introduced a few years ago, a questionnaire that asks a few specific questions of our potential board candidates so that the membership can get a feel for your experience and your dedication and that type of thing. So that's an important aspect of it as well. I guess that's all I have for the moment. Now I'm going to invite our Executive Director, Kim Kick, up, and Kim can talk about what it takes to run an organization like this. It's a lot of work, so.
All right, thank you, Gary. As Executive Director, it is my job to manage and direct all activities of the association and implement the policies and programs and projects that the board approves. I oversee the ANA staff, and I'm responsible for all matters relating to human resources and staff organization. I ensure that the association keeps within the scope of its approved budget and that we are adhering to generally accepted accounting practices in the management of our finances. I am required to keep a duplicate record of the association's minutes, prepare the policy manual, and attend all board meetings. I am considered to be the publisher of our magazine, The Numismatist, and I'm ultimately responsible for all matters relating to maintaining our membership, their services, and benefits. In all these matters, the board relies upon me to exercise my authority in making the best decisions possible for the ANA. And I must rely upon the board to make decisions that guide us toward success. Any contract the association signs that has a scope of more than 1 year or an outlay of more than $25,000, it must be approved by the board. All convention site selections and related convention vendors are decided upon by the board. Any business relationships designed to carry the association forward are done so with the board's advice and approval. As Executive Director, I implement these decisions and communicate their outcomes to the board to keep them informed of our progress and of our challenges. I offer the benefit of my 36 years experience with the ANA to help the board, and we work together towards our future. The board's role is partly that of guardian and partly that of leader, but it's also visionary. The board sets the strategic plan and determines what the ANA's goals should be for the future and how the ANA will adapt to the changing world of numismatics and the opportunities we should cultivate to keep our association strong. I am included in this responsibility, but I'm not alone in it. As Executive Director, my ability to create success for the association goes hand in hand with its leadership, the board. When I think of what it takes to be an ANA board member, I think of service-oriented leaders, people who help by asking what is needed and who find the resources to make projects happen, people who listen and understand the reasons why and then create solutions to these challenges, people who are encouraging, empowering, and positive. A board member is not in the trenches with me as I run our operations at headquarters and manage our staff. A board member is my ally in understanding the issues that are relevant to our business, our hobby, and our membership. and the future of the association. If you have professional qualifications that are valuable to this board's ability to understand technical matters, whether it's law, finance, or IT, those will be helpful to all of us as we work for the good of the ANA. What is also important is each individual's ability to be of service and to be a supporter and ambassador of what is good about the ANA. That sums it up. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Obviously, Kim's responsibility there is tremendous. She has a staff of, like I said, about 35 people that she manages, and putting on a convention like this twice a year, all the other things, the budget, like I said, we have a huge budget to deal with, and all of the aspects of that. Putting on our summer seminars, if you've had an opportunity to get to the summer seminars, those are fantastic. And again, there's so much work involved in this that you really have to be part of it to understand the depth of that. So we hope that you will consider becoming an ANA board member. If you have any questions, obviously you can talk to any of our board members who are here at the show, any of our panel members that are up here today. So with that, I don't know, first I'll ask, do we have a few board members here? Or anybody want to add any other comments that we missed here? Okay. All right, then we'll open it up to questions. And then, as I said, I might appoint a particular panel member to answer that question. Anybody have any questions for us?
Gary.
Yes, sir.
We have a national charter, which is kind of unusual. Does that present any special obligations to you guys that you have to do things differently than if we were?
The question is that we have a national charter, and I'll let Kim talk about this.
Is it Bob?
Michael.
Michael, I'm sorry. As Michael asked, we are chartered by Congress, which is very rare for nonprofits. There's only a few in the country that have that. And what it does bind us to is our regulations with the District of Columbia regulations. So I think it's more of an honor, and as Holly will be presenting in some of our board meetings, the bylaws have to be similar to the District of Columbia. So that's probably the biggest tie-in that we have.
Thanks for that question. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Just as a follow-up to that, I know that usually at the state level, states provide not indemnification, but some protections to board members of nonprofit organizations. I know you have D&O insurance, but I'm wondering if perhaps Holly, you could talk a little bit more about the protections to the board members as a result of whatever the District of Columbia regulations might provide for nonprofit board members, what level of D&O insurance you have, and what, if any, indemnification the organization provides to its board members.
So the question, just to reiterate, is for Holly, and the question is, what protections does the ANA have, whether we're dealing with on a national level or on a state or local levels, what sorts of protections are there in place for board members? Holly?
So the most common claim brought against a board member would be a breach of your fiduciary duties. And generally speaking, each state's law, both statutory as well as common law, is slightly different and is developed slightly differently. But generally speaking, the immunity extends to a board member who has made a reasonable effort to educate themselves, to read materials, to fully disclose their knowledge, both pro and con, for any action. To the extent you've acted in a reasonable manner in exercising all those duties, generally speaking, there is an immunity for you under the nonprofit statutes, as well as actually even for-profit corporations. And so I'm not sure if you want a specific statute, but I'm trying to think back on lawsuits against the ANA. I can't remember any individual board members being named individually. So it can be done, and it may be done. Typically, when litigation is brought against anyone, you look for a deeper pocket. And so the ANA is always going to be named, and usually the individual board members haven't, as far as I can recall in history. As to the indemnification, there is a general duty and under our insurance policy to offer that to our officers. When there's been litigation in the past, I think those expenses on behalf, I'm just trying to think back on various litigation, I think virtually all of the governor's expenses related to the litigation have been covered. Yeah, as far back as I can think. And as to our coverage limits right now,
I texted Carol, I can't quite remember either.
it is substantial. We
It is
have a deductible that I want to say is 25,000 to 50,000, somewhere along those lines we would have to pay in legal expenses. So typically the insurance company retains an outside law firm to represent us in litigation. The ANA pays the first 25 to 50,000 in legal fees. After that, the insurance company would pick up the remainder of the fees. If appropriate, usually the insurance company will also appoint individual counsel for separate defendants. Sometimes there's conflicts of interest, and so individual counsel would be appointed to protect individual interests. I don't know if I've answered all of your questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Holly. I think it's important to understand, too, that the board's responsibility is protecting the assets of the ANA, and you don't do that by becoming involved in litigation unless you absolutely have to. So that's an important thing to remember, is we don't want litigation. Litigation just costs us money. It drains the efforts of our staff, obviously, getting involved in that kind of a thing. So we've taken an approach here the last few years to avoid litigation at any cost. We hear sometimes, why isn't the ANA more effective? Why doesn't the ANA go after the bad players in the hobby and the industry and so on? Well, we could do that if we wanted to drain all of our resources, and that's not our mission. Our mission is education, and so we want to stick to that mission and develop programs that help. One of the initiatives we have, in fact, you're all invited. I think is it Thursday morning?
I'm sorry.
The e-learning platform
Yes.
discussion? Yeah, Thursday morning, if you look at your program, we have an e-learning platform demonstration that's being brought to the board, and that has to do with online education. We're looking at online education and making that more available to the numismatic community and to people who would not normally be able to come to a convention like this or go to our summer seminars. So that's going to be an important part of it, and you're welcome to join us for that discussion too on Thursday morning. Yes?
I think you kind of answered the question already, but I'm wondering how involved you get with things like the Wayfair issues or cultural property issues. I work with coins, and so for me, that's one of the things that always concerns me about my business. I served on the IAPN as a board member, and part of a lot of what my job was working with cultural property issues. And I know for the normal, collector, they're not that concerned with it, especially because a lot of people, they're collecting U.S. coins, and that's not my area. So there's certain things, I'm just wondering, I know the ANA is that education is very important to the ANA, and that's important to me as well. But I'm wondering how much you work with organizations like the P&G or certain organizations.
Sure. The question is how involved is ANA in working with other organizations and working with things like cultural property and other issues that come up in our industry. And the biggest factor there is that we're a nonprofit. We are not allowed to be involved in lobbying. So that's a key issue there. We can't get involved in lobbying. The only thing that we can do is support organizations like ICTA, IABN, other organizations, in the fact that, you know, we might create a letter of support, for example, for an issue that comes up or something like that. But we're not allowed to be directly involved in lobbying or anything that associated with that because of our status. That being said, we have a lot of strategic partnerships with ICTA, for example, which does a phenomenal job. If you're not an ICTA member, if you don't know what ICTA does, I suggest the Industry Council for Tangible Assets. Please check it out, because right now with this Wayfair issue that you talked about as far as sales tax could affect our industry dramatically. And so ICTA has an effort right now to help to solve that problem, and it's a huge problem, to be very honest with you. Same thing with counterfeiting. The ANA has taken a dramatic step forward in working with ICTA on the Anti-Counterfeiting Task Force. So there are things like that that ANA can be involved in to a limited level, but we certainly support all those organizations in any way we can to help them move forward with their initiatives. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I have plenty of time to give. And some people told me that I do have some talent, but one thing that I am lacking is treasure. The question is the ANA going to become a board of elitistic, deep pocket members, or is it going to be open for those who don't have the deep pockets to pay their way, but have the talent to contribute and do for the good of the ANA?
Mm-hmm. Well, right now there's no stipulation, there's no requirement for financial support of the ANA. That's a goal of the ANA, basically, is to have board members who are involved, who can afford to help the organization. And we want members at all levels. Right now, we're very underrepresented by collectors and by women on our board. So we want that perspective. We want collectors to be involved. We want people, whether they're, you know, collecting Lincoln cents that are circulated or whether they're collecting the finest known coins available. We want people involved in all different areas of the hobby. And so we need that perspective. The fact is that we don't get enough participation on people. Last election, for example, we only had, I think, 7 people who ran for the board. Is that right? Or I think 5?
8. Yeah.
8, yeah. So I'd like to see us a slate of 20 candidates or 30 candidates. Each one bringing a different perspective to the organization, obviously. And so the broader our perspective in that, the greater value that the board is going to have to the organization and to the hobby and the industry moving forward. So yes, we welcome that. There's no stipulation for financial requirements, but obviously that's something that we would like to see all of our board members participating in, and the fundraising aspect of it. So, Jeff?
Yeah, I want to address that a little bit too, because when I was president, that was brought up quite a bit.
Jeff, do you want to come up to the mic?
Yeah. Okay. You know, when I was president, we brought up that quite a bit, and I had even proposed that board members not being reimbursed for travel, because if you're going to be a board member, your real travel is to come to the ANA Summer Convention, and if you're not coming to the ANA Summer Convention anyway, you shouldn't be a board member, so that was illogical in my mind. But the most important thing to answer your question is you can be a good board member and have no money, but you need to be able to take as a commitment to go out and help raise money, because I'm sure you know people who love the organization, who live, eat, and breathe coins, but you should not be a board member unless you take it on as a commitment to help raise funds for the organization, because I've been dealing in it for like 8 or 9 or 10 years, and people come in like, I got these great ideas. Every great idea comes with a price, right?
Yes.
So, the ANA already provides more service right now. It costs more to send a numismatist out than you're paying dues. So everything else we have has to either come from fundraising, strategic partnerships, and things like that. So it's really a cultural change. And another thing to point out is we are the only organization in a nonprofit in the United States that I know of that has a board structure where you're actually elected. Every other board, every other nonprofit anywhere near our size actually has committees. They go out and they hand select people that should be board members. And usually those board members, what they bring to the table is mostly treasure. And they want people, because Kim really, to do what she needs to do, it requires money. you know, the board members, we talk about like ideas and stuff. She's got ideas up to here, but she has money down to here, and even down to here, that we're already providing more services than we even take in. So, you know, I've been dealing with that for a long, long time. There's been lots of pushback, but I think that this board, I think, has started, you know, pushing back on that's how important that issue is. And I think it needs to be continued to be hammered in, because at some point the organization is probably going to have to restructure, because the money we have is not going to support long-term the goal. And especially if you want to come up with like e-learning or some other great ambitious things, well, that money's got to be found somewhere. And you know, the future of the ANA is not guaranteed. I mean, luckily we're blessed with a great endowment, but that endowment we already spend right at the edge of being responsible spending and going a little bit past that. So I hope that answers your question. So you don't have to have money, but if you're not willing to go out and ask money and try to work on that, then you should not be a board member. So that's my opinion.
Can I make one comment?
Sure.
One additional comment with that, about the funds, is that ANA also has tons of other volunteer opportunities, whether it's a local representative, a regional delegate, or even someone to moderate the online forums. So there's a ton of other areas if you can't make the entire commitment or the majority of the commitment to be an ANA board member. So I wouldn't discourage anyone because just say you don't have enough money, I can't do it. There's lots of other opportunities at the ANA.
I have a comment. The lawyer in me, I'm sitting here listening to all of this, but it seems like what you're saying is you can do something else, but if somebody wants to be a board member and they lack resources, that seems like a concern to me, because a board member is not the same as these other areas that you're discussing.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, and that's about, can you make the commitment to be there? Number one, there's the 2 conventions a year. Those are the commitments to be the board member. You have to attend those conventions. Almost everybody here, they're going to go to the conventions anyway. I mean, I haven't missed a convention in, 30 years. So no, mainly I'm doing it because I'm a business person. I'm coming here anyway, but even the collectors, they come here to the ANA. The only one I would say would be reimbursable is like when they have they go to Colorado Springs to the headquarters, when they wouldn't be going there anyway. You know, so when they're meeting at the headquarters for an orientation every 2 years, that one would be the one I would think would be paid for. But to come to Philadelphia or Denver or Irving, Texas, I would think that there's no reason to reimburse them like the ANA staff that gets a stipend of $42 or $37 to pay for a Subway sandwich. That to me is a little ridiculous that they pay for that if you're going to be coming to a convention anyway.
Thank you, Tom. Tom, you might have a word.
I think this is all our passion as we look forward in building on the legacy of the ANA and individuals that are reaching out. I just want to say something that Jeff had mentioned, and as we are unique in the fact that we are elected. So like when I'm invited to be a participant or a board member on, let's say, a hospital, and I know the hospital has an $8 million campaign, and all of a sudden you're invited, there's an opening on the board, and you know, it is back to what are your treasure and what are you, if you can't, as Jeff had mentioned, who are you going to be able to bring to the table? In my industry, I obviously am blessed with the fact that in the financial service world that I'm in, I have doors that I can open for the ability to facilitate a goal in a local community and so forth, and we can do so in the ANA. But one of the most important things when it comes to board participation, when it comes to donating, is that even if you donate $50, even if you donate $5, when Kim can go and write a grant and we say we have 100% participation from the board, not 99, not 95, you have to get your goal and to get that grant, no one's going to question when you have 100% participation. So it's not necessarily the dollar amount, but it is certainly the fact that you're participating, and it's the fact that we can then reach out for grants and other opportunities. So it has to be something. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Steve, you had a question?
I had 2, actually. Well, one's a point, it says here a meaningful financial contribution, but I would imagine that's in the eye of whoever it is that's making the contribution. If $500 is a lot of money to you, that's it. If it's $5 million, well, that'd be great, but that's it. The question I had was, I recall that the board sometimes in the past has met at Fun, and not just the A&A conventions. Would there be an obligation to travel to Fun if you don't travel? You know, I come to these conventions, I don't go to Fun, and I don't go to Central States.
Yeah, the question about attending shows and that type of thing and meetings that the A&A has. It's the purview of the president to call meetings. So if there's some important issue that the president feels needs to be brought up, that can either be through a phone conference or a meeting at a coin convention or whatever. So, we try to make it as convenient as possible, obviously, and that's going to be a critical part of it. And getting back to the donation part of it, as Tom said, the dollar amount is not important. It's a commitment to say, yes, I'm trying to do whatever I can to help the board. But even more than that, to me, the variety of people that we have on the board of directors is going to dictate our success. And what I mean by that is all of those things that I mentioned originally in my little breakdown of the things that are involved. We need somebody on the board that has good financial sense. We need somebody that's an attorney. We need somebody that, is involved as a collector. We need somebody that's involved as a dealer. So that we get many perspectives. That's the important part of it, is getting perspective, understanding everybody's concerns, and making the kind of decisions that we need to make. So that to me is more key than the other discussion we're having here about money. That's not critical. Mitch, you had a question earlier?
Mitch Ernst, President of Central States. I really appreciate what you guys are talking about, the fundraising and everything. With that in mind, we all know, being in the numismatic community, we all cast our lines into the same pond. How do you guys handle the possible conflict of interest from a board member who serves on multiple boards when they have a duty of loyalty to you, a duty of loyalty to another board? It's a quandary, because you want to encourage hobby participation, but then at the other time, we all realize how important fundraising is getting, and we're all speaking to the same people. So how do you approach the conflict of interest to the possible duty of loyalty to the A&A when you have a board member who's the president of a state organization, a vice president of a regional organization, and then all of a sudden he's on your board?
Well, that's an interesting thought. I appreciate that question. Mitch is asking about how do we deal with conflicts of interest if a board member is involved in a different organization as well. We consider the A&A to be the top level organization, obviously. That's our thought process. So if you decide you want to be on the board of the A&A, you have to consider what are your obligations, and do you have conflicts of interest serving on these other? There's no reason you can't serve on those, but it's important that you deal with that in a way of disclosure. And Holly, I think I'll let Holly talk about this a little bit, but that we have disclosure forms that you would sign at the beginning of your service on the board that says, I have a potential conflict of interest because I serve on the board of Central States Numismatic Society, or anything like that that may be a conflict of interest. You disclose that immediately. I used to serve on the board of the Industry Council for Tangible Assets. Once I took over as president of the A&A, I resigned from that board because I don't feel that I should be serving in two masters, if you will. But there isn't necessarily anything wrong with it, but each individual situation is going to be different. So I'm going to let Holly talk about it.
Gary, I had the same time. I was president of a state organization. I was president of a local club. And when I was elected president of Central States, personally, I didn't want to have to deal with a possible conflict. So I just resigned because I wanted to devote my time to what I was doing, to what I thought was as you mentioned, a greater service. So I appreciate
obviously we appreciate all the local organizations, the regional organizations. We don't do enough outreach, I don't think, to try to bring all those people together to help and work with the A&A. That's our goal, because you know, we have conflicts obviously with local clubs that say, you know, well, we're not going to push A&A because our members only have so many membership dollars, and we want to get those membership dollars.
Right.
So is that serving the hobby overall? No, not necessarily. But anyway, that's the kind of thing we deal with all the time, and we obviously want to work with everybody, and our outreach program is important. So I'm going to let Holly talk about that conflict of interest a little bit here.
Gary, Holly can address this. I think conflict of interest actually implies for personal gain. I think if you're in different organizations, I don't think that necessarily is a conflict of interest. I've been on multiple things and have successfully navigated that. So I think that should be framed differently than conflict of interest.
I guess my question was in regards to fundraising.
What's that?
My question is in regard to fundraising, because we're all...
I call it donor fatigue.
Well, right, so we're all...
It's different. Conflict of interest implies something different, in my opinion.
Well, okay, duty of loyalty to the ANA or whatever, or if you have those duties to all those, and you're going out asking for money.
Actually, I think what you raise is more of an ethical issue, is how do you divide the loyalties on when you're doing the ask.
Right.
Yeah. So moving back one step, just to be real clear, annually we do ask governors and key staff officers to fill out conflicts of interest forms so that we know what boards you're on, we know what interest you have in other organizations. So generally speaking, when we're sitting down to make decisions on contracts, we go into that knowing what interest you have. To the extent governor has a financial interest in a contract, they are typically excluded from voting on that. So that's the more nitty-gritty nuts and bolts. But your ethical question is more of a quandary, quite honestly. And I agree with you. And I don't have an answer. I wish I did. Because you do have it. I mean, everyone, I will say, there's nothing in our bylaws that obligates you to fundraise.
That's a good point.
And so legally, you're not obligated to do it. That's the expectation. And how you serve your different expectations, I'm going to have to leave that back to you. But Tom, I know Governor Urim has some insight on this. We hope you have the answer.
Since I'm probably much closest to your being president of the Pennsylvania Association, your host club today, and it's wonderful. I think it's all in balance is what it comes down to. And quite frankly, when it comes to the local club, regional clubs, state clubs, organizations, the ANA on top of that pyramid is what helps facilitate all the others in the foundation as well. So if you have a club and I mean, the first thing that I got when I started collecting was, and I still have the original stuff, an ANA membership application and a red book. And that was given to me as a gift, and that's what I got, and that's what I've been educated on, and that's what I try to do for our club members. I've given a lot of memberships out in our club just because I want them to see what the ANA is about if they haven't. And I would say we have 70% that are members. But when it comes, Mitch, to fundraising, like how's there a conflict? And it's only been a great working relationship, as I'm sure Central States is also with the ANA. And you balance that out. But I've never seen where there's been a conflict when it comes to fundraising or asking for money. But if it ever would occur, as Holly has said, as it relates to the ethical side of it, like, for instance, I asked Jeff Garrett to buy a ticket for a $100 raffle, which we have on sale. And it's for Pan. He doesn't say, well, I was going to give that to the ANA. But if he did, we would simply back off and say that's fine. In other words, we're not trying to pressure anyone, and nobody would, just like in your organization, if someone would ever say that. But it's never really ever been an issue or a problem. So it's all in balance, and the fundraising is more local for us in state, as a state organization, as I'm sure Central States would be. And I don't think that we're doing double duty as it relates to a board member versus the ANA. The ANA would always be first because that's what you're out there asking for when it comes to national. When it's local and regional, we have other people in the club as well as myself for doing things like that. So it's never really been a problem or an issue or a concern. So I would encourage you not to let that hold you back if you're thinking of running for governor.
Thank you, Tom. Another important thing to mention real quickly, our fundraising efforts are all directed through our fundraising director. We recently hired Donna Frater as our fundraising director, and Donna does a great job of that. So we're not asking you to, if we ask you to fundraise, that doesn't mean just going out on the board floor and talking to your buddies and saying, could you give me a $25 donation? Everything is coordinated through our development program, and so that's the key to it. So any asks that you're going out doing would be coordinated through our headquarters, through that effort there, so that you understand who you're talking to and what specific people we may ask you to go and talk to. That we haven't even started doing that yet. We're not even at that point yet. We're in the beginning stages of fund development. So that process will be vetted through. And so it's not like we're asking you to go out on the board floor and talk to your buddies and get a donor. That's not what it's all about. So that's an important thing to remember here.
I heard from 2 past presidents and I heard from the current president, but I'd like also to hear from the potentially next president, Don, what his take on this is.
As vice president, and been on the board for a while.
Don,
I don't.
why don't you come up?
Okay. As Jeff pointed out, this is an interesting board. It isn't normal boards, nonprofits. There are people there who have or can go to somebody and say, hey, I'm giving, I want you to give. This is a little different, but as Jeff also pointed out, we need funds to accomplish our mission and our goal. And there's a number of ways of doing that. And I think what we're looking at now is people at this level should be able to go to others, if not themselves, to be able to get that kind of treasure. We need that. There, as Tom also pointed out, there's many levels here to participate, and you have, and we're thankful for that. In the past, there's been people who have taken from the ANA to fund going to shows and whatever. And ANA has provided those funds. I think the emphasis is that we want you to understand that it's going to cost you some money to be a member of this board. That's just the way it is. The expectation is that you will provide other funds perhaps, or go out and get more funds. But it isn't required. It's just necessary that we have that kind of participation. When you get elected, you're getting elected by people who have faith in you to come up with ideas and to help the organization and move forward. In the past, some of those people who have put faith in you and voted for you also are there that they can support you financially if you have an issue with that. We're looking at ways that perhaps maybe there's a pool that people who want to promote other people because they believe in them can perhaps contribute to a pool or whatever, or contribute to you directly, so that expenses that you will need to participate in what you need to participate, like the shows and our meetings, then you're able to pay for that. So it isn't just you being expected, you can have the people who support you, support your ideas, what you've been able to do to help contribute to that effort. And that's something I would support. And so there's ways of doing this, and we're moving in that direction. But you should know, if you're going to be a member of this board, it's going to cost you time, it's going to cost you money, besides your ideas. So thank you all, really, for coming also, and showing your interest in coming up with these issues. We're dealing with them all the time, from my perspective. You want to say something?
Thank you, Don. Yes, sir.
I believe at one time the ANA had staggered terms, so you'd have continuity. Because I don't know that it's ever happened, but it's possible that you could have a complete different board every 2 years. Could that be a problem?
Well, I think it is, and I think the current board is addressing that right now. We're looking at ideas on what we might be able to do and if we want to have a good strategic plan moving forward, we have to have continuity, obviously. Because you could have a board and a leadership come in and say, this is what the road we're going to go down, and you go down that road, and 2 years later you have a whole new board, a new president, and so on, which may have a totally different idea. So that's why the strategic planning part of it is so important. That if you're going to put together that strategic plan, if you have a vision for what you're going to do 5 years down, 10 years down the road, and so on, that the people who are potentially leaders of the organization can run with that plan and make sure it happens. Because obviously the turnover is a huge issue. So we've talked about ideas, for example, of having 3-year terms for board members, or 4-year term members, or letting the president rerun, and things like that. So those issues are always on the table. People are always talking about it. We've talked about it for many, many years, actually. And so hopefully we can, decide what the best way to go. And anything that would be decided by the board of directors, for example, would be subject to a vote by our membership. Because any change in our bylaws obviously requires the participation of our membership. And that's another thing I should bring up.
Not a vote. It's not a vote by the membership. It just has to be published for their opinion.
Okay, well, Kim corrected me, I'm sorry, I misspoke there. It has to be published for the membership input, for their opinion. So the board can take a vote, but the membership has the rights of commenting on that, for example. So anyway, but yeah, that's an important thing, and I think it's very difficult. If you think about Kim's job, she's there and she knows what's going on the next 2 years because she knows who's on the board, how those people are going to be able to help her. I think she gets a good sense of, the people that are on the board and what she can expect from them. But then again, 2 years later, that board may change, the expectations may be different, so it puts her in a very difficult position trying to work with something like that. So that's what we need is board members who can think about these kind of things, figure out what is the best way moving forward, how to develop our strategic plan, and how to implement it years down the road. And that's why it's key to have great people on the board of directors. The governance of the organization is going to be what determines its success. And I think the past, 6, 8, 10 years that I've been involved with the ANA and on the board and now serving as president, that's the most important key, I think, to moving forward is good governance. And that's why this is the first time we've ever had a forum like this, inviting people, and I'm actually disappointed a little bit by the turnout we have here. But the nice thing is we have this on video, and we'll be able to put this on the ANA website, and anybody that's out there who couldn't make it to the convention, for example, will have the opportunity to view this, understand what is happening here, and move forward with it. So we hope that a lot more people participate and enjoy this online as we move forward here. Yes?
I'm just curious, the two-part is how many positions do you have available for this next year?
I'm sorry,
How many positions will be open for this next year?
Well, they're all technically open.
All positions are technically open. Everybody has to rerun again for the board of directors. So some people may decide they want to continue on the board. Some people may drop off. We have one board member I know for sure that's changed his career in a sense, and he'll be leaving the board. I know that. So, it changes. And so everybody is up for re-election every term. So that leaves a wide open slate. So one of the things I'd like to point out to you.
I also have a question for Tom Uran. Since Tom's been a volunteer for ANA, and you've done lots of different things for ANA, now you've been a governor, and now you've had a year of volunteering, and you've also been with your state, local as well. What would you tell the people that would want to be candidates for this next year? What's the one thing that you would like to share with all of us that you have seen with your previous volunteer coming into the ANA as a new person this year, as a governor?
The one word I think I would use is experience, and the other word I would use is positive attitude. That's 3 words. But I think that when as a volunteer, here's my rule of thumb. When I've been on boards, and I've been on a couple, when it becomes like work, it's time to go. And as long as you can keep it fun, as long as you enjoy what you're doing, as long as you can take the experience and show that experience, you'll have an opportunity to participate, whether it's at the governor's level or, as Gary said, at various levels, no matter what you like doing. So positive attitude and experience, and those just come over time, but the attitude, I guess I would say your attitude will determine your altitude, is the best way I can put that. So, Braylon, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And, you know, I've been involved in the hobby and the industry for over 50 years now, so this is kind of my way. I've served as chairman of ICTA, I've served as president of the P&G, and now ANA, and so it's my way of paying back, in a sense, the enjoyment I've had for over 50 years in the hobby and the industry, so that's why I'm involved in this. I'd like to thank Donna Nunez. I hope all of you received one of these copies. If you didn't, you know, Donna will have some available for you. This is fantastic. Donna, super job of putting this together, because I think we haven't had this in the past, and I think this is really important to take this with you. If you don't want to be a board member, we'd love to have you as a volunteer, obviously. If you know of somebody else that you think might fit the bill and might be interested in being a board member, you know, ask us, we'll send you one of these, and you can pass that on to them. So we would love to encourage anyone who's interested in serving our organization to please apply. Thank you very much for attending today. Anybody any further questions? Thank you very much.